we have all read and known about Scrum, and that's what we all follow. But here, this is Nexus, that is the scaled form of it. Is not scaled agile, but it is a part of it, and it will actually help us understand how we can manage multiple Scrum teams together. So I think, Prince, over to you. You can get started.
Thanks. Welcome everyone. As Francis said, all know that.
Prince cannot hear you. Everyone else can hear.
No, I think we are not able to hear.
Okay, now it's fine.
Yeah, better
Yes.
Prince.
It's better, but there is some background noise.
Just give me a second.
There's some background noise.
Okay, now it's fine. I hope so.
Yes, it's far better now.
Okay. Yeah, so as Prachi said, like we all know that how we can manage our products through the Scrum framework, but this is something different, which is the Nexus framework. And why we are using Nexus, so we can see in the next slides that how we can manage the multiple Scrum teams to build a single product from the single product backlog. So yeah, so these are some of the knowledge etiquettes. The first one is the punctuality. So we should join the session before the 5 minutes. uh, the feedback, so please do give the feedback for me so that I can adapt all the feedbacks, and in the next session I can be more careful about the mistakes which I am going to do in this session. Keep your mobile devices silent, keep your voice silent if you are not speaking, and avoid the disturbance. Yeah, so our agenda is simple. We will discuss the what is Nexus, about the Nexus process flow, the Nexus roles, the Nexus events, and the Nexus artifacts. Yeah, so before moving to the what is Nexus, does anyone want to know that why scaling needs? Anyone? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Prince.
Yeah, so does anyone wants to give the answer like why we need the scaling frameworks, and at least what are the scaling frameworks we know?
Safe.
Yes. Any other?
Nexus.
Okay. Any other?
Scrum of Scrum is also scaling frame.
No, I can't say Scrum of Scrum, because Scrum of Scrum is that they have the different product backlog as well.
Okay.
So yeah, there is one other called the less, I think, large scale Scrum, and one is SAS, which is Scrum at the rate scale. So these are some of the scale agile scale framework which we know at least. Yeah, so moving to the what is Nexus. So Nexus is a framework consisting of roles, events, and the artifacts and rules that bind and weave together the work of approximately 3 to 9 Scrum teams. Just repeating again, 3 to 9 Scrum teams working on a single product backlog to build an integrated increment that meets a goal. We can also say that the Nexus has a single product owner, which measures a single, which means that they have a single product backlog. But before moving to the next part, why we need Nexus, what challenges the Nexus is solving us. So there are some challenges which is solved by Nexus. The first one is to reduce the cross team dependencies. The second one is to preserve the team self-management and transparency. And the third one is ensuring accountability. The regions of dependencies. So there are also some of the regions of dependencies. The first one is that I can say that a product structure. So there will be the front end, there will be the DevOps, there will be the backend team, and they are all dependent on the product. So they need to discuss like what are the APIs and how the route behave, what are the formats they are going to give to the backend, what are the responses and the previews they are going to get. The second is the communication structure. So if the front end is they can't they can't build their API through themselves. So they need the backend guys. So they need to communicate also. So this is the second reason of the dependencies between the front end team and the backend team. The next slide is the Nexus process flow. So just move to the diagram. So here you can see that we have the same diagram as is in the Scrum framework, correct? We all know the diagram. We have seen a lot of time in the Scrum framework when we used to read it. But there are some add-on, which is that Nexus sprint backlog, the Nexus integration team, and the Nexus daily Scrum. When we used to have the Scrum, we just have the daily Scrum, we just have the sprint retrospective, we just have the sprint reviews. But here in the Nexus, we have some additional like the Nexus sprint backlog, the Nexus sprint retrospective, and the Nexus daily Scrum. Also, you can see that there is something called the Nexus integration team. So this Nexus integration team consists of 3 accountabilities, that is the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the appropriate members from the Scrum teams. So as I said, that there are 3 to 9 Scrum teams working on a single product. So what does mean the appropriate member? So just giving an example that a Scrum team consists of 8 to 9 members. We can pick 2 to 3 members from each team and we can make a Nexus integration team. Does it make sense to everyone? Any doubt?
No doubt, Prince.
Okay. The second is the who is accountable. So to ensure that a done integrated increment is produced at least once a sprint. The Scrum team addresses the integration issues within the Nexus. Nexus integration team also provides the focal point of integration for the Nexus, which includes addressing technical and non-technical cross-functional constraints as well. There are some roles as well. If we go through the Nexus guide, so there are some roles which includes in the Nexus integration team. What the roles they are having is they need to coach and consult and highlighting the occurrences dependencies of the cross team issues. So if I say there are a lot of teams, there are 9 Scrum teams which are working on a single product backlog. So all are having single issues which they can tell to their appropriate team members, and they can discuss in their Nexus daily Scrum that yeah, my team is facing this issue. I need this team member help. So just giving an example that there are 2 team or 3-4 team like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. So Charlie is having some issues and they need help from the Bravo team. So they will go in the Nexus daily Scrum, the appropriate team member, they will say to the Bravo team that yeah, I need your help in building these APIs. My team is dependent on you. So they can now consider the APIs and they can build those API and give to those teams so that the team don't get blocked and the dependencies get resolved. Also, just to be more careful, highlighting this one point, membership in the Nexus integration team takes precedence over individual Scrum team membership. So just giving an example, like if an engineer is working on both a Scrum team, he is also a part of the Scrum team and he is also a part of the Nexus integration team. He should give in the more importance to the Nexus integration team over the individual Scrum team. Any doubt on this?
No, not here, but in general, I'm curious. I just have one question that when there are multiple teams involved, like you said, Alpha, Beta, Charlie. So who will be accountable? I mean, with so many teams involved and so many work going to simultaneously, how will we hold people accountable? Or do you know what I mean? I mean, with everything, will it not be a chaos? Who will be handling everything?
Yeah, so just give an example. So the product backlog will be managed by the product owner, correct? There will be a Scrum Master as well.
You mean individual teams? Each
No,
individual team.
no, Prachi. So product owner will be single person because as we know that if a single product backlog, so there should be only single product owner, correct?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, but the Scrum team is can have a different Scrum masters. Depends on the organizations. If an organization is capable of hiring more Scrum master and they can align a single Scrum master to the single team.
Okay.
Did it?
Okay. Yeah. Then.
Okay, and the Nexus integration team here you can see it. So the Nexus integration team will form by taking each member from the each team. So if from Charlie we can take one member, from Bravo we can take one member, from Alpha we can take one member, okay, and the product owner and the Scrum master. The single Scrum master can be accountable for the two Scrum teams as well. In the next area there is no mention about that the individual team should have an individual Scrum master. A single Scrum master can hold the 3 to 9 Scrum teams, or he can hold 2 to 3 Scrum teams as well.
Okay, so suppose Alpha and Bravo that there is a bug or a dependency which needs to be worked by both Alpha and Bravo. In that case, who will take the ownership of work?
Yeah, so if they will discuss in the daily Scrum, okay, so there is called a Nexus daily Scrum. In the Nexus daily Scrum, the Nexus integration team participate, and in the Nexus integration team, there will be there will be at least one member from all the teams, correct?
Okay, okay.
And they can discuss that, yeah, this is the bug which I got in my team and is dependent on your team as well. So they can communicate in the Nexus daily Scrum so that the dependency gets resolved.
Okay, so I think the team which will be actually working at first will be the first team accountable, and the team probably if the second team needs to work later after the first team, then they will be responsible. Okay, okay.
Yes, correct,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. Yeah, please move forward.
Sure. So just let's discuss more about the roles and responsibilities of the PO and the Scrum Master and the integrations team. So as we know that there is single product backlog, so product owner will be accountable for the product backlog. Have the final decision making authority, so product owner will be having the final decision making authorities. They will be also accountable for maximizing the value of the product, and they will also accountable for effective product backlog management. Moving to the Scrum Master, they will be accountable for ensuring the Nexus framework is understood and enacted. This Scrum Master may also be, as I told that this Scrum Master may also be a Scrum Master in one or multiple Scrum teams in the Nexus. The third one is the Nexus integration team, which helps the Scrum team to adapt tools and the practices which they need to be developed the single product backlog. Any questions still there to anyone?
Prince, how many product backlogs are there in the Nexus framework? Is there a separate product backlog for the individual Scrum team?
No, yes, no. There will be a single product backlog.
Okay, so there is one product backlog and it's prioritized, and individual teams in their daily Scrum work on those refined backlog.
No, so I can tell you more about the when we will move to the next slide, which is the Nexus event. Okay, so in that time we will get more clearance about that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so as we know that the Nexus process flow, I think I covered pretty much, but the flow will be that same. We will have the product backlog, then we will have in the refinement. So in Scrum, we know that the product backlog refinement is just an optional. Correct. We don't have any events called the product backlog refinement in Scrum framework, but in Nexus, it is mandatory to have the product backlog refinement and it is considered as an event. Moving to the next, there will be a Nexus sprint planning. So what is the Nexus sprint planning? I'll be telling more about in the next slide, but this is the flow, how with the flow will go. So we'll be having the Nexus sprint planning. Then there will be the deployment work will be going, which the developer will be working on their stories and the task. We will be having the Nexus daily scrum. And after that, the Nexus sprint review and the last ceremony, which is the Nexus sprint retrospective. Anyone has any question about the process flow? Am I audible to everyone?
No question.
Yes.
Sure. Okay, then thank you. Okay, so I have also told about the Nexus roles, that what will be the accountable for the product owner and what will be the roles and responsibilities of the Scrum Master and what is the responsibility of the Nexus integration team members. But let me tell you more. So as we know that the product owner in the Nexus integration team will be managing the product backlog. The product owner is also responsible for maximizing the value of the product and the work performance integrated by the Scrum team in the Nexus. Same goes with the Scrum Master, as I previously told that in the Nexus integration team has overall responsibility for ensuring the Nexus framework is understood and enacted. And one of the more Nexus integration team members, so they will be helping the Scrum team to adopt the tools and the practices which they need to build the single product backlog or the increment at the end of the sprint. Moving to the Nexus event. So as I said earlier that in the Scrum we don't have any events called product backlog refinement. Is optional whether the team wants to do the product backlog refinement or not. But in the Nexus it's an add-on to the events. So the cross team refinement is mandatory in the Nexus event. Before it was the refinement itself, but in the latest Nexus guide they have changed the terminology for this and they have made the cross team refinement. So what everyone will be doing in the refinement. So this is as I told that this is the new event added for the Nexus, and the cross team refinement. The whole team will not be going in the refinement meeting. So let's give an example that there are 7 to 8 team members, and each Scrum team is consist of 8 members. So there in the cross team refinement meeting, the whole 64 team member is not mandatory to join the call. The appropriate team members from each of the Scrum team along with PO and the Scrum Master can join the call and they can refine their product backlog. Also, when we will be doing the refinement, it can reduce or eliminate the cross team dependency. So when we will be doing the refinement, we will able to figure out the dependencies on the cross team, and so that we can also reduce or eliminate the dependencies. It also helps the Scrum team forecast which teams will deliver which product backlog item. It also identifies the dependencies across the cross-functional team, across between the Scrum teams. So what will be the outcome for the cross-team refinement? Does anyone wants to answer it? Okay, so the cross, as we know that in the Scrum we have a set of stories. When we used to define the stories, we will have a set of stories written, all the description and all the acceptance criteria will be mentioned, who is going to pick all those. The same in the cross team refinement meeting, all the Scrum team will be knowing that yeah, this is the product backlog item, or this is the epic, or this is the story which needs to be done by this individual Scrum team. Any questions on the cross team refinement event?
How long does it last?
So Prachi, in the Nexus guide, there is no mention about the duration of any of the events. It depends on the organization and it depends on the project's behavior and the complexity. And it can also define by the team as well that how much time they want to do the cross team refinement meeting. So there is no mention in the.
Is there any ground rules or any any basic guidelines that this is the minimum or the maximum?
No, Prachi. So nowhere nowhere mentioned that how much time does a cross-team refinement meeting should take. It can be decided by the organization, can be decided by the team member itself. But yeah,
Okay.
as we know that we can take the duration of the meeting related to the Scrum which we have in the Scrum, but there is no mention in the Scrum Nexus guide or anywhere that how much time that cross-team refinement should take.
Okay, so maybe this is something we can look into further. If not there, so probably the experience from people who are actually using it to check. Okay.
Sure, sure. Moving to the Nexus sprint planning. So yeah, it is also a additional of the Scrum framework. Sorry, in the addition in the Nexus framework, apart from which we used to have in the Scrum. Appropriate appropriate team members from each Scrum team and the PO can join this call. So not the whole team will join the Nexus sprint planning. Only the appropriate member and the product owner can join the Nexus sprint planning. But a single Scrum team can have their own sprint planning meeting, as in we used to have in the Scrum. So the Nexus sprint planning meeting will be only joined by the appropriate team members from each Scrum team and the product owner and the Scrum master. But the individual Scrum team can have their own sprint planning meeting so that they can refine their stories more and they can plan much better way their stories. To also Nexus sprint planning helps in to coordinating the activities of all the Scrum teams within the Nexus for a single sprint. What will be the outcome of the Nexus sprint planning? So we will having the Nexus sprint goal. So what will be the Nexus sprint goal? So the Nexus sprint goal will be the collection of the each individual Scrum team sprints goal. Does it make sense? So Nexus sprint goal will be the combination of the each individual Scrum team's sprint goal, which is called the Nexus sprint goal. Moving, and the second thing will be the Nexus sprint backlog. The outcome will be the Nexus sprint backlog. So the backlog also will be the same. The collection of all the individual Scrum team backlog is called the Nexus sprint backlog. Anyone has any doubt in the Nexus sprint goal?
So all the, all the teams would be, the goal would incorporate goals from all the Scrum teams, right?
Correct, correct. So the individual team having their individual sprint goals, but the Nexus sprint goal will be the combination of all the individual Scrum team sprint goal. Okay, the Nexus daily Scrum. So yeah, it is also added for the Nexus. In the Scrum, we just only have the daily Scrum, but in the Nexus daily Scrum, we will having something called the Nexus daily Scrum. Each Scrum team's daily Scrum complements the Nexus daily Scrum. It's also appropriate. Only the Nexus daily Scrum is joined by the appropriate team members, not by all the engineers which are working in the Scrum individual team. So it will be the participants of that Nexus daily Scrum is the appropriate team members of each individual Scrum team. To identify any integration issues and inspect progress toward the Nexus sprint goal. Also, we can know cross team communicates with each other to know that my team is dependent on your team. This is the bug which I got, and this is the thing which the API which you need to deliver. So they can communicate the cross dependencies between each other so that the dependencies get resolved. But this is the Nexus daily Scrum. Each individual Scrum team should also have their daily Scrum as we used to have in the Scrum. So in the Nexus daily Scrum, only the appropriate team members and the product owner and the Scrum master will join. But each individual Scrum team should also have a daily Scrum, which like we used to have in the Scrum framework. Any question in the Nexus daily Scrum? Okay, so moving to the next event, which is the Nexus Sprint Review. So it replaces the individual Scrum team sprint review. So as we know, we have just going through that. The Nexus sprint planning will be only participants will be the appropriate team member. Each individual Scrum team will be having their own sprint planning. Same goes with the sprint goal. That each individual team member having their separate sprint goal. Same goes with the daily Scrum, that each individual Scrum team will having their separate daily Scrum apart from the Nexus daily Scrum. But in the Nexus sprint review, as the all the team is working on a single product backlog, it should be integrated in the by the end of the sprint. So there will be no separate sprint review meeting for the individual Scrum team. All the team members, all the Scrum team will be participating in the Nexus sprint review meetings to showcase their work, because we are taking the product backlog item from a single product backlog, and we are developing a single product as part of the many Scrum teams. Nexus Scrum Master, Product Owner, and other stakeholders also can join the Nexus Sprint Review meeting along with each individual Scrum teams. It can also use it to provide the feedback on the integrated increment and determine the future adaptations as well. We can also measure the progress towards the product goal as discussed. So the Nexus Sprint Review is clear. Like we don't have the individual sprint review. We will having only the Nexus sprint review, which will be replacing all the individual sprint review. Moving to the Nexus sprint retrospective. So this is an additional for the Nexus. So why it is additional? So we have only the sprint retrospective till the Scrum framework, but in the Nexus we will have in the Nexus sprint retrospective. This is also the last meeting of the Nexus sprint. Scrum team sprint retrospective complement the Nexus sprint retrospective using the bottom up intelligence. So just giving an overview like how we can proceed with the sprint retrospective. So each individual Scrum team member can do their retrospective along with the team. There will be a lot of action item we will be getting from those sprint retrospective. We can leave the individual Scrum team. So we can leave those action item which is encountered only along with the only within the team, not the cross dependencies, and we can take the action item which is dependent on the other team, and we can participate in the Nexus sprint retrospective to highlight those action items. Correct? Anyone has any doubts in any of the Nexus events?
Hey Prince, do we have a demo in this or no? There's no Nexus demo.
No, sorry, no demo for this.
I think demo should be the part of the review. That this is what.
Oh, yeah.
The demo is the important event.
Okay, so you're saying, Prachi, the demo is part of this review cycle.
This is what I would like to believe. I mean, I think
yes, Prachi, you are correct. So, sorry, I got something here. In the Nexus sprint review, we will be having a demo which we can showcase to our stakeholders and the PO that this is something which we have built by the end of the sprint.
Okay. And typically, what's the duration of this Nexus sprint?
There is nowhere mentioned that what's the duration of the sprint. We can consider as same as the Scrum, which is the 2 weeks or the 4 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Prince.
Thank you. Yeah. So moving to the artifacts. So does anyone wants to answer what is artifacts? Okay. So artifacts. Sure, Prachi. Artifacts represents the work or the value to provide the transparency and the opportunity for inspection and adaptation as described in the Scrum guide. So that's artifact is same as we are knowing in the Scrum as well. So it will be the work or the value to provide that transparency and the opportunities for the inspection and adaptation. So the first artifact is the product backlog. So product backlog, as we know that there will be a single product backlog. It's for the entire Nexus and all of its Scrum teams. And the PO is accountable for the product backlog. It's for the content availability and the ordering. So again, someone can ask like how a PO can know decides and how they can create lots of stories for all those 3 to 9 Scrum teams. So if we say that, if we see the new latest Scrum guide, the product owner can delegate their responsibilities to the Scrum Master or to anyone which they want to not create the stories. But the accountability still will be there for the PO. They will just delegate our responsibility to create the stories, but the accountability will be for the PO itself. The commitment, what the commitment will be for the product backlog is the product goal, which will be the future state of the product and serves as a long-term goal of the Nexus. So when we say the product backlog, we should have a product goal, which so that after the 6 months we can see that they are how this is the product we are trying to build and how it will look like this. So this is the future state of the product and serves as a long-term goal of the Nexus as well. The second is the Nexus sprint backlog. So this is the Nexus sprint backlog. Sorry, just I've written the goal here, but I can read it. It is the composite of the Nexus and PBIs from the sprint backlog. The PBI is the product backlog items from the sprint backlog for all the teams. It also ensures to highlight the dependencies and the flow of the work. It also updates the throughout the sprint. So as we know that we also used to do the same thing in the Scrum, that we have to update our sprint backlog regularly. So same goes with the in the Nexus sprint backlog as well, that we have to update our sprint backlog regularly. The commitment, what will be the commitment for the Nexus sprint backlog with the Nexus sprint goal? It is a single objective for the Nexus. It is the sum of all the work and the Scrum teams within the Nexus. It is created at the Nexus sprint planning event and added to the Nexus sprint backlog. So when we get the sprint backlog, we used to get in the sprint planning meeting, and it can also be added in the Nexus sprint backlog. The third one is the integrated increment. So current sum of all the integrated work completed by the Nexus toward the product backlog. It also inspects the Nexus sprint review, and it may be delivered to the stakeholders before the end of the sprint. The main thing is that it should meet the DOD, the definition of done. So the commitment for the integrated increment will be the DOD, which defines the state of the integrated work when it meets the quality and the measures required. It should be also integrated, valuable, and usable. So we can't deliver anything which is not integrated, which is not valuable, and which is not usable. The Nexus and integration team is also responsible for a DOD for integrated team. So just giving an example, we can define a Nexus definition of done, but the individual Scrum team can also have an additional DOD while working on the product. So there will be a called the Nexus DOD, which will be defined by all the team members, but the individual Scrum team can have the additional DOD as well. So just give an example that we have defined in the Nexus DOD that one review is sufficient for the code review, but an individual can have 2 reviews as well. So it depends on the individual Scrum team, but what's are mentioned in the Nexus sprint, Nexus DOD, it should be mandatory, but an additional DOD can be added by the individual Scrum team. Anyone has any doubts in the Nexus artifacts?
And where can you create these artifacts?
We cannot create, it's the mandatory artifacts.
Yeah. So where do you maintain these artifacts?
So the product backlog we can see in the Jira, correct? We have the Nexus sprint goal sprint backlog, which we can also see in the Jira. Integrated increment, we can document a Confluence page or any Confluence page where we can mention, yeah, this is the definition of the code quality should be this. The PR should be approved by 2 engineers, and the branching strategy will be like this. If it's a release feature, the branching strategy or the title would be like this. If it's a hot fix, the title would be like this. So we can create a lot of definition of them in a Confluence page, and we can share within all the team members that this is the definition of done. And if individual Scrum team wants, they can add more in those sheet that, yeah, this is my particular individual Scrum team will follow this DOD.
Got it. Got it. Thanks,
Prince.
Prince.
I have a question on integrated increments. Suppose there are 7 to 8 Scrum teams working, and each team at the end of sprint comes up with their individual product increment. So at what stage those product increments are integrated, and by who?
By the end of the sprint, all the thing will be integrated in a single code base. So the Scrum team will be working on a single product, correct? The code base will be the same, just the feature which will be developed, the feature will be developed by the different Scrum team. But by the end of the each day or by the end of the sprint, it will be going to the same code base. We will be merging every our code in the same code base, in the same repository.
Okay.
So we are not, so just we are not developing different product. The product will be the single, but we will be developing the different features of a single product backlogs, single product, and will be integrating by the end of the sprint to the same code repository.
Okay.
Any other doubts?
Yeah, Prince, I do have a doubt actually, and I was actually scratching my head. I mean, why Nexus? I mean,
Sorry to interfere, but time check. We only have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, thank you, Rashi. So, yeah, Prince, I just want to understand, why Nexus? We do have, a lot of scaled or agile techniques as well. But what is the difference between those techniques and the Nexus?
See, every technique, every scale, agile technique have some pros and cons, correct? We can't say that, yeah, safe, we can't go this much. In the safe, let's take an example in the safe, correct? We plan for the quarter, correct? And in the we plan for the quarter, there will be some, so each sprint will go smooth, the second sprint will go smooth, but what about the third one? There are problems in the scale safe, there will be problem in the less, there are some disadvantage in the SaaS as well.
Okay, I just really
I think what Amit is trying, what Amit is trying to ask, that where we can use safe, where we can use Nexus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Amit, where Nexus we can use while developing a single product, correct? When we are developing a single product, we want the delivery faster. Then we can have a multiple Scrum team who can work on a single product backlog, and we can get, so there will be a lot of teams. Let's say that I said in the earlier as well that there are 3 to 9 Scrum teams. Each Scrum team can consist of 8 individual engineers. So there are 64 members working on a single product.
Okay.
So the delivery will be more faster. And why we are using Nexus? Just to reduce the cross-team dependencies between the 3 to 9 Scrum teams.
Okay. But
and the
I'm not well versed with safe agile, but I've recently started exploring it. So I think all these things that you've said, that a cross-functional team can be integrated, that can be done through safe agile as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pooja and Prachi, since you are actually going to implement it, or you have already explored it. So I just want to understand why Nexus. I mean, still I'm not convinced about about Nexus, because I do have a similar
difference is, Amit, that in Nexus there is only one product backlog, but while in Safe there are multiple backlogs working on a product. So like Prince mentioned, right, when I asked him that there would be different teams, but the product backlog would always be the same, and there would be no individual backlog in that sense. But in Safe we have multiple team backlogs.
But can't we create a single product backlog in Safe as well?
No, because the same, I think, deals with a larger set of audience. Because saying from my example, like in notifications where we are moving, there are around 100 people part of the PI planning from teams, and that is not the kind of scale we are looking up in Nexus.
Acha.
This is my understanding.
Yes,
That's the
Prachi,
only
it's correct.
difference. That's the only difference.
Okay, I think we have only 1 minute. How many slides are left? Prince?
It is the last slide.
Okay, I think we should be exploring more, and
You
I
can
should
take
be.
up questions later, Amit, or
Yeah,
you can reach out to Prince.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Prince, for the session. I also got to learn about Nexus from you. This was my first time.
sure.
Thank you for the
Thanks a lot.
wonderful
Thanks a
session.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prince.
Bye.